we're trying to address right now? You say that we can't have instability, we need to get a decision now. What is the instability that we're dealing with right now?
Well, we have 12 months remaining in the mandate of this government, but we have a 4-year project or longer ahead of us. We have had, as you know, through the summer, some challenges with passing legislation. The stability that I believe we had over the course of our minority government is not as strong as it was when we began. Dr. Weaver, my colleague, at the beginning of the CASA process and the beginning of our minority government, is leaving politics and will be returning to the University of Victoria. The challenges of partisanship within the legislature will always be there, but particularly this summer it was clear to me that there is a great divide between the two sides, and the best way forward is to allow those who no longer want to represent their communities because of long service. I know there are 7 within my caucus, at least 7 within the Liberal group, and of course Mr. Weaver, who are moving on. So now is the best time, it seems to me, at the beginning of the pandemic, to renew the legislature, at least 15 new faces as a result of those retirements, and the challenges and opportunities that that will bring. I think we need new ideas from every corner of the province, regardless of where those ideas come from, and now is the time to do that.
Justine, do you have a follow-up?
I do, thank you. So we've got now about 5 weeks of a kind of caretaker government. Who's managing the pandemic over the next, between now and October 24th?
The tradition is to have a stay-behind minister to work with the public service, the professional public service, which I have complete confidence in. That minister will be the Deputy Premier and Finance Minister, Carol James, and there is not a person in British Columbia that I have more confidence in than her, and I am sure that she will administer the government of British Columbia to meet the needs of British Columbians as issues arise in a way that will do us all proud.
Our next question comes from Vinder Sajan.
Hi, Premier. I'm wondering, you spoke about how you came to this decision. I'm wondering, did you have any moral or ethical concerns about calling an election that you're sure to win, it looks like at this point, or are likely to win, 1 year early in the middle of a pandemic?
Well, I don't believe that anything is certain in this life. Certainly, I did not anticipate that I would be Premier at the beginning of a global pandemic, so I'm not taking anything for granted. But I do know that we need stability. It's a marvel to me that I recall back when the government was formed, most of the pundits said it won't last 6 months, it'll be lucky to last a year, and then it was 18 months, and then it was, well, they might get to 2 years. Well, it's 3.5 years since the last election, and it's never a bad idea to ask the people of British Columbia what they think, and that's what we're going to be doing on October 24th.
I do. And do you expect British Columbians to believe that we would not be headed to the polls right now if public opinion polls and internal party polling didn't show the NDP leading?
I appreciate the question, but I have to, again, reiterate that I have grappled with this, and it has been a challenge because there are colleagues that I'm going to miss who are retiring on both sides of the legislature, particularly Dr. Weaver, who I've had a very positive working relationship over the past 3.5 years. But the challenges ahead are not about me and they're not about politics, they're about British Columbians, and we have significant challenges ahead on the health front, on the economic front, and what instability that brings to our communities and our social fabric. And I believe the best way to get going on the work ahead is to put the politics behind us. I cannot imagine 12 more months of bickering, 12 more months of not knowing whether a bill would pass the legislature because of uncertainty in numbers. I think the best way forward is to resolve that now. Not just for me, but particularly not for me, but for British Columbians, and that's why we're doing this.
Our next question is from Richard Zisman.
Did you lie to British Columbians when you signed a CASA deal that said you would not call an early election, and now here you are calling an early election?
I believe that the CASA document and the coalition, or pardon me, the minority government that I've had the honor to oversee over the past 3.5 years has done extraordinary things for British Columbians. But the issues of 2017 are not the issues of 2020. We did not contemplate a global pandemic. We did not contemplate the upheaval in our economic fabric. We did not contemplate the challenges of public health. And I believe that what we did in the past was one thing. What we need to do in the future is quite another matter. And the best way forward is to ask the people of British Columbia where they want to go and who they want to lead them.
Richard, do you have a follow-up?
should British Columbians trust you that it's safe to go and vote? Like, so many people are concerned, as you, I'm sure, have heard, that they don't want this pandemic election. Should they trust that it's going to be okay? And are you worried about how a campaign like this hurts our democracy, considering you won't have as much media scrutiny, you won't have as many rallies? Like, it's just not going to be a campaign like we know it. Thank you.
It's going to be unlike any other campaign, without any doubt. But what I've observed over the past 7 months is that I've engaged with thousands of British Columbians in every corner of the province without leaving Vancouver Island. I've been able to engage through Facebook Live presentations conducted by media. I've been engaging on Zoom calls. I've had one-on-one calls. I've had collections of people. This will be different. We will be engaging in different ways. But I firmly believe that the notion of rallies, the notions of hysteria during election campaigns oftentimes puts the style ahead of the substance. And I believe that an election now is the time to discuss the substance of where we want to go as British Columbians. I have never been more confident that this is the time to ask British Columbians where they want to go. Unprecedented times call for unprecedented actions.
Our next question is from Rob Shaw.
Hi, Premier. Green leader Sonia Furstenau tweeted out that she met with you Friday and told you that you have a stable government with her support. You're telling us this morning there's instability. Why don't you believe what she told you on Friday?
Well, I had a very good meeting with Sonia Furstenau on Friday. We discussed a range of issues. I laid out for her the concerns I had following the summer session of the legislature, where 2 significant pieces of legislation were not brought forward because we didn't have the support of the Green Caucus, and another instance where the Green Caucus amended a financial bill without discussing it with the Minister of Finance or anyone else. So the evidence speaks differently, but this at the end of the day is not about the confidence of the legislature, it's about the confidence of British Columbians. And it's never a bad idea to say to British Columbians, who do you want to lead you and where do you want to go? After 3.5 years, the time is right for that. We are at the beginning of a pandemic, not at the end. We have a bunch of work ahead of us, and I think a renewed legislature with new people, with new perspectives and new ideas is the best way forward.
Do you have a follow-up, Rob?
Yeah, thanks. Outside of the Second World War, this will be the first election ever conducted in BC in a state of emergency. Why do you think that's appropriate, and did that factor into what you were wrestling with?
Well, I think that it's important to put in context your question. None of us have ever been here before. None of us have ever tried to grapple with the challenges that British Columbians are facing, families right across BC. And we need a stable government to go step by step through the challenges as they emerge, not to be hamstrung by uncertainty about whether a bill or an initiative of government will meet the muster of a minority parliament. This is an appropriate time to ask the people of BC where to go, and that's why we're doing it.
Our next question is from Lisa Yuzda.
Premier, you talk about putting people before politics, but there's a lot of people feeling pretty cynical about this, including parents who are looking at more than 2 dozen exposures at schools right now and wondering why you're not just focusing on that right now instead of what to some seems like a power grab.
Well, the people that are concerned about the economy, people that are concerned about the global pandemic need to know that the public health officers remain in place doing the fantastic work they've done to keep us safe over the past number of months. When it comes to our schools, safe operation of our schools is not the responsibility of the Premier, it's the responsibility of school boards, administrators, trustees, and I'm very confident that the foundation for a solid education plan has been put in place that's not one size fits all. What's needed in Langford is different than what's needed in Langley. What's needed in Salmon Arm is not the same as what's needed in Saanich. So districts will work this through. Principals, parents will work this through. I have every confidence in the professionalism of those in the education sector, and most importantly, the good judgment of parents that we can get through this. People are going to work, people are buying their groceries, the economy is operating, but there is doubt because we need to ensure that policies that are brought forward by the government are going to be seen through, and we don't have that today, and that's why we're seeking a mandate from the people of British Columbia to carry forward.
Lisa, do you have a follow-up?
a lot of parents are feeling like they're not getting the information from this government, and that's where they're feeling unsure, not that they're feeling that there's a lack of stability. So I wonder if you can talk to that, because that's what I'm hearing from parents, that they're not feeling like they're getting the information they need to make the decision for their families. And ultimately, the buck does stop with you, not with school districts or school boards.
Well, I disagree with the premise of your question. I have not, in previous years of school years, even when my own kids were still in the system and I was an elected representative, I did not have a role in the education of my kids. That's why we have elected school boards who have superintendents, who hire vice principals and principals, who work with teachers and care aides and the whole host of the extraordinary people that keep our education system going. And if parents want information about their school, the best place to get it is from their school, not from the premier. And so I just reject that. I understand absolutely that there's anxiety, and I feel that, and I hear about that. And I direct people to the appropriate location to get the information that they need so they feel safe about their families, they feel safe about the education system. It's best to be done at the local level, because what happens here is not the same as what happens in Vancouver or Vanderhoof, and on it goes.
Our next question is from Rob Buffum.
Well, hi, Premier. I'm wondering how you respond to folks out there who would view this snap election as an opportunistic power grab.
Well, I can't really respond to that, Rob, other than to say that I believe that we are involved in politics. We have been involved in politics for the past 3.5 years, and we have been able to accomplish a great deal. But the challenges ahead of us, dealing with a global pandemic, are unprecedented. And I believe stability is what's required, not just for 12 months, but for the next 4 years. And that's what I'm going to be asking British Columbians to support me about. And if they don't, they don't.
Rob, do you have a follow-up?
I do, and it relates to Richard's earlier question. I'm just wondering about any concerns you have in relation to this campaign and how democracy may be impacted. For example, if there aren't door knocks, things like Zoom, older voters may not, have the same facility with their access to, or in-person local candidates debates. If those are online, there may be people who just don't have the opportunity to be a part of that or get that information. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, as with all campaigns, leaflets will be available at door-to-door, I'm sure, and information about candidates in local constituencies will be available through a variety of platforms, not just the internet. The good news is that many seniors have landlines. I have a landline. So my number's in the book, or it has been in the past, so being able to contact those who are not adept at the internet is going to be the easiest part of the campaign, quite frankly, but it will be different, no question about it. But I am confident that in 2020 we will be able to connect with people, talk about the issues that matter to them, and from there build a strong government that will be focused on the needs of people.
The next question is from Les Lane.
Well, thanks. Premier, we've been in a state of emergency and health emergency for 6 months now, and that gives the provincial health officer a certain amount of authority and clout over a lot of policy decisions. Did you consult directly with Dr. Bonnie Henry about calling an election, and if so, what was her comment?
I didn't discuss an election directly with Dr. Henry. I talked about what her views were on the state of the pandemic. We talk regularly. What she made clear to me is that we are far from out of the woods. We have a long way to go, and that we will be in a pandemic in the spring. We will be likely still be in a pandemic next October. So I looked at the landscape. I looked at the challenges that we face, and I made a decision, and it was a difficult decision to arrive at. But Dr. Henry's advice and counsel on public health issues has been absolutely indispensable to me and to British Columbians. But the final decision to call an election rests with me and me alone, and I take full responsibility for it.
Les, do you have a follow-up?
Her kind of consistent messaging over this time is that it's a time to pull back, to retreat, to just maintain the kind of hunker down and wait it out. And you're calling the biggest, what is obviously always the biggest public engagement exercise that a government can call. Don't you think this just directly conflicts with the tone of all her messaging through this emergency?
Well, no, not entirely. I believe our biggest challenge right now in terms of case numbers is people who are disregarding the advice that's been given over the past 7 months. Staying distant if you can't, wear a mask. wash your hands regularly, and if you're not feeling well, do not go out of the house. That is the challenge with respect to COVID-19, not whether or not we ask people to go to a polling place over the course of a number of days, or if they're uncomfortable with that, to vote from home. New Brunswick just concluded an election with 66% turnout, which is relatively high. Saskatchewan will be underway in a few short days. Other jurisdictions around the world are having elections. I think that we need to put this in perspective. We're asking British Columbians to engage in their public life, to give advice and counsel to where they want to go and who they want to lead them. And it's never a bad idea to do that. I'm firmly convinced of that.
Our next question is from Karen Larson.
Hi there. Thank you very much. Premier, 7 cabinet ministers have announced they're not running again, and there are several nomination battles with controversy, you could say. Is your party truly prepared for an election?
Well, I've been asking my colleagues for 3 years what their plans are. I'm very sad that 7 of my colleagues have decided to step down. They have served British Columbians very, very well. Many of them have been with me since I was first elected in 2005, and I absolutely understand that they want to look at other pastures, other things to do with their life. There are an equal number of Liberals not seeking re-election. This is a time to renew the legislature, and in terms of preparedness, I believe we're as ready as we can be. We have 32 days to make our case to British Columbians, and they'll decide on October 24th.
Do you have a follow-up, Karen?
Yes, thanks. BC has the highest number of active COVID cases per capita in the country. Why is this appropriate to call an election now?
Well, we have a low positivity rate with respect to the number of tests we've been doing. Again, I've taken counsel from Dr. Henry on the essence of the pandemic, on the issues that are important right now. The election, of course, was not an issue that I needed to raise with her. She's been working with Elections BC to make sure that should there be an election, it will be as safe as possible. I think British Columbians will find as we get into the voting phase that this will be like no other. There will be a long period of advanced voting, so there won't be a big crush on Election Day. Election Day will be on a Saturday for the first time in a long, long time, as well, of course, as mail-in ballots. So I am confident that the process of the election is one to get a new government that can focus on the needs of British Columbians. British Columbians are out in their communities. I was on BC Ferries last week. There's a lot of people moving around. The challenge we have is that people are not abiding by the health orders that are already in place. That's had an impact on nightclubs. That's had an impact on activities largely of younger British Columbians, and we've tried very hard to get their attention, and we'll continue to do that, as will Dr. Henry.
Our next question is from Dale Boyd.
Hi, Premier. I'm just wondering, have you thought about the particularly marginalized citizens with health issues or low income, how they're going to take on an election in 5 weeks when people are definitely concerned about, finding a job or keeping their job?
Well, those are just the very issues that I believe we need a stable government to address. Again, asking British Columbians to find the time to make their choice about who they want to lead them through the next 4 years is something that will happen on October 24th, the final day of what will be a long voting period. I believe we need a stable government to address the very issues that you've raised about inequality in our communities, about the challenges that we face. And the best way to do that is to get the politics behind us. 12 more months of politics and partisan wrangling will not serve anyone. Let's get it out of the way at the front end of this pandemic so that we can have confidence going forward over not just the next 12 months, but the next 4 years, that we have a government in place that's focused exclusively on improving the lives of people.
Dale, do you have a follow-up?
Yeah, I guess if there was an election to be held next fall, I guess what's the difference other than a year of campaigning, since we're going to have an election during a pandemic anyway? Considering right now, as of 11 a.m. of your announcement, I don't have any candidates to call in the Boundary Smokeamine riding. The incumbent has announced her retirement, and the NDP has not announced a candidate.
Well, we have 32 days. The final day for nominations, I believe, is 2 weeks from Election Day. So this is a process that I believe everyone will engage in. I don't think that it's in anyone's interest to spend the next 12 months arguing with each other. I believe we can spend the next 32 days doing that and then have a government that's focused on what they need to be focused on, and that's people and their needs in every part of the province.
Next question is from Keith Baldry.
Oh, hi there. I recall having a conversation with you in your office back in March in which you said you were not going to be the sort of the lead hand in the government. You're going to leave this to Adrian Dix, to Carol James, your frontline ministers, and of course Dr. Bonnie Henry. And you've won a lot of praise for that. A lot of people think your numbers popularity is high because of that approach. Are you concerned that now we go into an election, you're about to take the exact opposite approach, and that you're now the face of the government in this pandemic in a way you haven't been before, and perhaps voters may judge that differently?
Well, they may, and that's up to the voters of British Columbia to decide. I'm going to make my case for continuing the government with my team and the direction that we've had over the past 3.5 years, focused on making sure that we have resources in our healthcare system, making sure that we're building the schools that growing communities need, like here in Langford and in other parts of BC. Those are the issues that matter every day. Dr. Henry will remain as the public health officer. She will continue to do her briefings. Minister Dix is available in a pinch, but I think Carol James is as the overseeing the administration of the government over the next 32 days. We're in pretty good hands. I'm very confident about that, and it's my job to now make the case as to why British Columbians should return me and my team for the next 4 years.
Do you have a follow-up, Keith?
Yeah, speaking of Dr. Bonnie Henry in briefings, we have one today at 3 o'clock with her. It'll be 3 days of COVID-19 cases. We're averaging about 120 a day, so we could be looking at a 350-plus COVID case number this afternoon. Are you concerned that a lot of people today are going to say, whoa, 350 cases of COVID-19 on a day an election is called? Is that actually something that's proper to do?
Well, that's one of the very issues I grappled with, Keith. These are unprecedented times, and uncertainty is around every corner. But I have no confidence that the situation on the health side will be better in 6 months or 12 months. What I know is that we're coming into the end of the summer period. We're going to be heading into cold and flu season. I believe now is an appropriate time to ask the question. We have COVID. It will be with us for the foreseeable future. There will be case numbers that will be alarming. But the challenge for us is, do we have a government that will be in a position to respond in November, December, January, and February decisively in the interest of British Columbians? I'm not confident that we have that today, and that's why I'm asking British Columbians to give confidence in the next government by having an election.
Next question is from Tim Ford.
Yes, thank you. I wanted to ask about the nomination competition in Sticking. Anita McPhee is seeking the nomination against former MP Nathan Cullen. I wanted to know if you had an opinion on the party's equity mandate and if the party will be honoring that mandate.
Well, I'm very proud of what we've been able to accomplish as a party in the current legislature. Half of my colleagues in my caucus are men and half are women, all coming from diverse backgrounds, all coming from different parts of British Columbia. And I am confident that the equity mandate has served my party and by extension British Columbians. I also know full well that we have done our level best to make sure that we have that same diversity going forward. Of the 5 seats from Prince George to Prince Rupert, there are 5 seats. 4 of them will be contested by women from my party, 2 of which are Indigenous women. Nathan Cullen's seat, the party there asked 15 different individuals in the community if they were prepared to run, and they weren't, and so Nathan stepped forward. I'll direct you to the party president for the details about how that will unfold, but I believe the equity mandate has served my party well, and by extension, we look at our legislature now, and it reflects the diversity of our province, and I'm very proud of that.
Tim, do you have a follow-up?
Yes, thank you. You've been talking about this election as a sort of need for stability, asking British Columbians to endorse your government's vision. If that vision is rejected and your government does not form a majority next election, would you step aside as leader?
I think that might be an early question, seeing as I haven't got through the first hour yet. But certainly I'll reflect on all of those issues in the fullness of time.
Our next question is from John Crawford.
Yeah, getting back to the Stikine riding, that's the largest riding area-wise in the province of British Columbia, and yet, one of the most empty ridings in terms of the number of people in it. And, while we're talking about candidate selection and how a lot of that's going to be done online now rather than face-to-face meetings, some of those areas are kind of outside of the connection zones or connectivity. How are people in remote areas going to be able to choose their leaders in this small window of time?
Well, again, with respect to the NDP candidates, I'll direct you to the party president. Those administrative issues are handled by the party, not by me. But I have every confidence that we at least have been working overtime to make sure, as we have been, quite frankly, for 3.5 years, we are reminding people that we're a minority government. An election could have been held in 2018, 2019, 2020. And here we are, and we have been working in every part of the province, encouraging people to support the direction that we've been going, a direction that focused on people, a direction that ensured that when we made decisions, we were first and foremost thinking, as I was, about the people of Langford, from where I come from, the people who sent me to Victoria. And we want to renew that, not just here in Langford, but in communities in the north, in the Kootenays, in the interior, and on the coast.
Do you have a follow-up, John?
Well, I was going to ask about a question that's already been asked, and that's with regards to Anina McPhee versus Nathan Cullen in that situation, but I think that's already been answered.
Thank you.
Okay, we only have time for one more question today, and that will be from Mary Brooke.
Hello, Premier. With a continued NDP government under your leadership after October 24th, what would be more stable for British Columbians than waiting for the pre-scheduled election date in 2021?
Well, as I said in my opening remarks, I believe that the challenges we face are not for the next 12 months, but indeed for the next 4 years and beyond. And I believe if we have partisan wrangling and we have politics for the next 12 months, we won't be putting all of our energy leaning into the challenges that British Columbians are facing, that people are seeing in their communities every day. And I guess I want to get the election behind us, not for myself, but for the people of BC, because they can't afford to have a partisan hectoring, uncertainty about whether bills will pass or not, which is what we've experienced over the past 3.5 years. And I believe that stability will come by asking the people of British Columbia where they want to go and who they want to lead them.
Mary, do you have a follow-up?
Yes, I do. Thank you. About those two pieces of legislation that didn't go through this summer, you say because of the failure of Green support in the legislature, what are British Columbians now doing without as a result of that?
Well, one of them was about energy policy, and we can agree to disagree on energy policy. That was not a particular concern of mine, but the one that was of concern to me was one to do with mental health and whether or not a medical practitioner, a doctor, could keep a minor, a child, who had been admitted with an overdose under observation for a week. That was what we were asking to do. And there were people in the legislature that did not support that. And having met with parents who'd lost children, I was not prepared to accept that. But it seemed okay to others in the legislature, and I'll leave it at that. But that was really the deciding issue for me. I've talked to parents who've lost children, and if only they had had an opportunity for clarity in a medical setting, not in a juvenile detention center, not being taken away from their parents, but under medical supervision. That was what we were seeking, and it wasn't accepted by the legislature, and that's the pity, and that's my frustration.